So they'll be calling you a radical. This is my grandparents' tombstone here in Brigham City. Ella Potter Hunsaker, Ike Potter's granddaughter, the incredible Ike Potter. And of course, my grandpa, the incredible Abraham Hunsaker IV. So, Abraham Hunsaker III, Abraham first and second, these, Hunsakerville, which is Honeyville now. So, of all the incredible people I've ever known in my life, and I've known a lot of incredible people, she's the most incredible person I ever knew. Charm, elegance, grace, strength. She was brilliant. Ike Potter. Now you think about how historic is Ike. The 1820s he got here. He spoke all 5 tribes' languages. And in Colville, Porter Rockwell killed him, shot him in the back, slit his throat. And he spoke all 5 tribes. Remember when I hiked up to and found the rocks up there in Echo Canyon? She ended up married to this historical figure, marries this historical figure, Abe the Fourth. So we'll start with Ella. Oh my gosh, she was incredible. So, of course, they had 3 daughters. So they named no sons. So I was always going to name my mom's Margene, the famous artist. Incredible woman. So I always promised when I have a son, I'll name it Abe the Fifth. I have 3 daughters. So, I call my grandsons, you know what I call those guys, Abe the Eighth. Now, Ella is Ike Potter. She's born and raised in Lava, Idaho, and she's so Idaho, it's unbelievable. When they first got married, they lived in Lava, Idaho. My mom and her 2 sisters were born in Lava. Abe was born, of course, in Hunsakerville to him. So Abe the Third could have been the richest man in the state of Utah. She's incredible by her own right. Now, she died in childbirth. He was a little boy. Then he was electrocuted. They were putting in a well in Hunsakerville. So he comes from this lap of luxury. The UPSP trains when they met, right out here. That's him standing on the train just a couple back. But the first SPUP office was in his house, Hunsakerville. She was incredible. Unbelievable woman. So, her own words. How does the Hunsaker name line go on? Now, his grandfather was one of the group that found the gold at Sutter's Mill. We'll walk over there. It's buried right over there. So, and he has many, many, many wives. Who decided on which son was to carry on the name? Because Abe the second, these weren't first sons. He wasn't first son. And according to her journal, I read it, the Mormon Church has it. It was God. The mother decided through God. And so my grandpa was Abe the Fourth. Them white sand pits right there. Al Hunsaker, Abe, Tom. I grew up in that pit. We made all these tile roofs that are all over here. They're not cooked in a kiln. I got scars all over my body from that white sand, blanched plastering. That's the purest white sand on earth. The sand on the beaches in Southern California. That's where it came from. They would train it down there. And so he called himself the Great Mormon Socialist. He didn't believe in inherited wealth. And he went from being born into the lap of luxury to orphaned as a little boy. I need to write a book just about him. Ella and him, wow, what a pair. They were incredible people. Really. She was so Idaho, it's unbelievable. Say, she stuck to it too, living here in Brigham City, Utah. Well, these people in Utah don't know how to drive. Well, he does. Yeah, 100 and something miles an hour every place he goes, because we'd be in our car headed to Southern California. The statue at Old Town is his grandfather. The Hunsaker Mill from Nauvoo. This is them. I'm them. So, I'm them. This ain't enough for a kid. So, he becomes orphaned. You know, the Hunsaker wealth, his older brother Al, his older brother Tom, you know, he comes here back to Brigham City, back to Hunsakerville. Now, Brigham City was started as the Hunsaker Mill. Hunsaker Mill was started, yes, named after Brigham Young. And it was a pure experiment in communism, redistribution of wealth. Brigham City was the experiment city. Spill over from the Hunsaker Mill. The Hunsaker Mill was where the post office is. It was 100% redistribution of wealth through the bishop's office. You know, the communal farms of the Hunsaker Mill. Oh, he still believed in that philosophy. So did my other grandfather. So the house is still there, somewhat. My auntie, my Janice, who's a walking, talking encyclopedia genius, she's buried in Hunsakerville, Honeyville. He was incredible. I mean, oh my God. They lived right on Main Street in Lava, Idaho. When the little girls were all three little, and they came back here. You know, in that pit right there, that pit. You know, and so my dad worked for him. So let's walk over here. Ike Potter. Oh my God. She was a walking well, she was the historian. She was a genius. She was brilliant. She was incredible. You know, and so let's finish this with Ike. So Ike, she would always say, you know what that true story was with Ike? When the Mormon church turned on him, when he fought off, you know, they called it Deseret. And Ike's the one. He spoke all 5 tribal languages. And then they kept saying he was revving trains. Well, yeah, he was doing it for the Mormon church to protect Deseret. You know, and she says, no, it was all over the wife. You know, in those days, Mormon bishop decided he wanted another wife. He just took him and threw him out. Not to this guy, not to Ike Potter. Oh, that wasn't happening. So he was, you can look it up, he was tried in the Court of Appeal in Denver. You know, Utah courts would find him guilty. He would go to the court. He got found not guilty in the U.S. courts every single time. So what was it really? Well, I know what it's really about. It's over Ike's beautiful wife. And Mormon bishop just, you know, they just take him and run out. Not with this guy, you're not. No. Like, I would have loved to see him try that with that guy. She was a genius, elegant, strong, graceful. I've known a lot of incredible people in my life. I was so close with her my whole life. She was a genius. He was a remarkable man. You know, again, Hunsakerville, which is now Honeyville. He decided that it would be changed to Honeyville. It was him who decided. So, let's walk over here to Abe the First, which this pisses me off over here. By the way, people won't walk into the cemetery. Like I just told the guy, that little place to take your life and get yourself killed in the cemetery on Memorial Day. So let me show you this. So this is Abe the First. This is his gravestone right here. This is him. He was one of the group that found the gold at Soder's Mill. So at Old Town in San Diego, when they walked the Mormon Battalion all the way down, the fighting was over on the Mexican-American War. So he was Mormon Battalion. So he stayed in San Diego. The statue at Old Town, that's him. This is him. This is him. Now, they continued to walk up. Now, the Hunsaker, the name comes from the first wife. So, multiple wives, 54 kids, and 5 wives. And so, he went up to Monterey, California, the tree ceremony, where people don't even know where that marker is. I've done videos and showed people where that marker is. And so, they're all right. So, they walked up to Monterey. They were there for the ceremony when it went from it was Mexico. I don't think people understand that. The capital of Mexico was Monterey, California. Mexico threw the Spaniards out. Before that, it was old Spain. Now, of course, the Mormons claimed it as Deseret. The whole Western United States, they claimed it as theirs. Ike Potter, back to them. So then they continued on to, and they couldn't get over the pass, so they got jobs at Sutter's Mill. And we'll wait till the storm in 1847, 8, and 48. So, just looking down in the American River, I love what Mary tells me in Monterey because I'm friends with her. I do all that work at the Typos in Monterey. She says, Kevin, you talk about Steinbeck all the time. She says, I knew him. Oh, he was a real prick. I says, yeah, he's one hell of a writer, though. And she says, and she's the one that is always pounding my brains as a little kid in Monterey. And she's, still working. She's still at the Borg Hotel in her 90s. She says, Kevin, you don't think the indigenous people, the native people, the Mexican people, our family knew the gold was here? They didn't care because they didn't worship the golden calf. And so they looked down, of course, in the American, at Sutter's Mill. They sacked up sacks of it. They didn't tell me how many chunks big as this can. Loaded it up, came back now, and that is what created the Mormon Church, was that wealth from the gold at Sutter's Mill. He was one of them. Abe. He bought the mineral rights all the way across here, all the way up into Idaho, settled in Hunsakerville, which is now Honeyville. He would have been probably the second. Let's walk over there. Now this, I got to talk, he probably would have been the second so-called prophet of the Mormon Church, third. He's the one that, because he was running the Hunsaker Mill, blah, 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 and he was a Comstock guy. There's so much people don't realize that he was over at the Comstock, and ties into Mark Twain, ties into so much of this incredible Western history, and he was at the Comstock. And all three of his first sons were killed, all three. Now, I've been in the Mormon Church archives reading his journal. They have part of it retracted. I have Ike's original journal. She gave it to me, my grandma. So they're not getting that. But they have this, and they've retracted parts of it. So they were killed by natives, and so it wasn't, the first son was not Abraham. The fourth son became Abe the second. He's buried right over there. And so right there. And so this is what pisses me off. Now, I've talked to the state about this. I will fix it. I can fix it. And there's only one guy, really, that could fix it. Of course, this is his show. It's been hit, knocked over, as you can see. Most likely run over by a car. And so it needs to be fixed. He's such an historical person. The statue at Old Town, that's him in San Diego. So after the Comstock, comes up here, sells the place back to San Diego. And he lived in San Diego for a long time. And like I said, the Hunsaker Mill there. 29 different ethnicities living in harmony, including Mormons, including the Portuguese, including the Spanish, Don Quixote. They had to write in pseudo the Pentateuch name because the Queen never found out that they liked it there, False Bay. So our family goes back to 1847 in Pacific Beach, California. White Earp on Balco, Sheriff Hunsaker, his son, and so I should write a book. You ain't a kid, and I should. Well, this is a book. So let's walk right over here quick, and then we'll get back to Abe the second, Abe the third, Abe the fourth, and Kevin Blanch, Abe the sixth, I guess. They had all girls, Abe and Ella, and that's quite the story of why they stopped. My mom used to say, well, Ella's mother, which was a Hemingway from Idaho and not related to Ernest, so she's the one that went in behind Abe's back and had Ella's tubes tied. The mother, she was real dominating. And right there in Lavo, you go out towards the golf course on the big turn where they have the family. That was their house right there. That was the farmhouse. And they were ranchers, huge, giant ranchers. And so tied her tubes, and the family went crazy. And so that was the end of the line. But my mom says, well, she always says, well, Abe would have a kid every year. He would have outdone Abe the first. He's going to have more than 54 with one woman. Well, so right here, this is Lorenzo Snow, president of the Mormon Church. Now, the story goes, he and Abe the first were very close, and it was probably going to be Abe the first was going to be the president. He's like, no, I'm too busy with the, Hunsaker mill, blah, blah. So his friend Snow, handoff, blah, 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 blah. So it's historic markers in a historic cemetery. These are old, and it was called Hunsakerville. And that's him. That's him right there. And it is an outrage to me. The historical side of this city or this state is such a mess. That's an incredible historical marker. And you see when it's busted in half. That's Abraham Hunsaker the first monument to his multiple wives and all their children. Look at it. Oh, it's disgusting. These are his wives. They're buried here. Oh, it pisses me off. It blows my mind. But look at as you drive up here, you'll see the Peter Skeen Ogden right on the Box Elder County line, which he never set foot in Ogden, but that's still there. But the Kit Carson one that blew down, I video and video, they let that go to shit. And look who did it. Yeah, it's amazing. I've said I can fix it. I'm probably the only craftsman that knows how. I mean, you're looking at it. That pin that I wear on my funeral jacket that I got in Austria, the jacket, the pin is a shovel made of gold, and that's platinum in the side. Jack Parsons himself made that for my grandpa. And my grandma, when he died, gave it to me. Because the last 10,000 job. And here's the irony to all this, and I didn't know this until I was older. I was the biggest stucco and plaster contractor in the whole Northern Valley by far. I did the Train the Children's. I got hundreds of them, all cement. That sand right there. And that shit makes such great. By the way, Fifes has just been recently closed. Same family. The Whitakers, same family. Jack Parsons and Abe, like this. They sold that pit right there to Jack, I think in 1968. Al sold it. Al Hunsaker was something else. He was the movie star in L.A. He lived right over here. He lived real modest too, but he was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Him and Clara both died young. His marker's right over here. And he had no children. He had one adopted son. And I used to tell my mom, well, why Digger married you. My mom was beautiful. And what an artist. The Woodbury artist, the pinup artist in La Jolla, the tennis player. Her 1948 pink, made by Tom Hunsaker, who she's worked for. All she did was play tennis. The La Jolla girl and the Brigham City, Utah girl in her 1948 pink graduation high school present from Box Elder High School. Buick, driving it around, playing tennis. But then she went to work right there at the Intermountain Indian School. I'll do another video because I got some incredible stories about the Intermountain Indian School. My mom worked there, so I knew the chief personally. Blah 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 blah. So this is Abe the First. He's such an historical figure. I come from the first wife, and Abe the Second's right there, and right there's Abe the Third, as I showed you. Abe the Fourth, my grandpa. They're the Sutter's Mill, they're Pacific Beach. They're such historical Western. The fact that Abe married Ella, he became an orphan at 10 years old grew up in the lap of Ruxer. You should see the photographs in before then. It was a nightmare, and the oldest sons fighting over the wealth, which was Tom, who owned all the car dealerships up and through Idaho, through Utah into Salt Lake, and then Al. Al was incredible. That dude was something else. God, he blew my mind. He couldn't have any kids, and I remember my mom telling me, he at the parties then, he had a really beautiful wife named Clara. Incredible. The parties in Los Angeles, he got gonorrhea and it did something to him. And it's probably true. He used to always say, Brigham Young was nothing but a sex fiend, he'd always say. And Claire would look right, well, you would know, wouldn't you? She was beautiful, and she got cancer and died. Had one adopted son, Lon. Well, what he did with the wealth is beyond me. I don't know. Don't really care. He was a professor at Utah State for a while, but he was adopted. He couldn't have kids. And so then Tom, that whole thing, they ended up with an Anna Nicole Smith situation. A lot of his money is at Don. God, I should tell this story. Don, you know, the several brothers, there was some photographs came out of this guy living on 25th Street in the paper, and he had all these beautiful, looked like he grew up in wealth. And they ran it in the Sunday paper. Who is this guy? Who is this guy? My mom didn't even tell anybody. She knew it was him. Right on 25th. And so she went up there and got it all and didn't even bother telling anybody, but the newspaper ran an article. I'm like, why didn't you tell anybody? How did you know? He lived in hiding for years and years and years. That's a whole nother story, which is an incredible story. He lived, he changed his name, hid out for like 40 years. I mean, it's a crazy story. So, there are some books out here about her. She died in childbirth, and he was electrocuted. And then Abe became orphaned. And he was very young when he met Ella. They were young, too young to be married. They got married, lived on right before the heart of the Depression. They were very young. And they lived right on Main Street in Lava. And she was his Idaho guy. She never really accepted Utah. She was Lava. I mean, Lava, Hot Springs, Idaho, right on Main Street. So I spent a lot of my life there. She was incredible. Ike Potter. God, she was the historian on Ike. What a figure he was. Oh my God, he was incredible. You know, and then those two get here. So here's the heir to the Ike Potter legacy and Abraham Hunsaker, and they got married. And my mom is their child, their second middle child, Janice. By the way, the oldest grandson, Mike, who I adored and loved, Vietnam, drafted into Vietnam. He was something else. He has recently just passed away this year. So he used to always say, I like hear you say, I got 12 grandchildren, 6 boys and 6 girls. He'd say, 6 boys, just enough for pallbearers. So when he died, I remember I went and seen him right before he died. Ella could have lived a lot longer. She says, I'm been alone too long. You know, I sat with her. She passed right before. I was really close with her. You know, she was a genius. So I wanted to get this in. So the third, the first, the second, the fourth, all girls. They had 3 girls. They all passed at the same age of dementia in their 80s, early 80s. I always said when I have a son, I will name him Abraham. Our second child, doctors, it's a boy, it's a boy, it's a boy, was going to be named Abraham the 6th. And this girl, beautiful, incredible young woman, still is. Her little girl's named Ella, and my granddaughter, but born exactly almost to the day 100 years after her. I named her Cassie after Cassie Gaines. But anyway, so my 2 grants, and this is what pisses me off. Weber State got a grant to 150 Golden Spike, and I'm like, these are the heirs to. There's nobody more important than the Hunsakers, him on the railroad. Then back there, 1869, the Hunsaker Mill was Abraham first, the second, third's house, the SPUP's office. That's him on the right. Says you should interview these boys. Weber State got a grant to do interviews, and they didn't do them. They stole all the money. The Weber State Special Collection that was a loot job. The Stewart Library, what they did is disgusting. What the state, they didn't interview them. I took them down there. I said, they need to be interviewed, my two grandsons. I call them, as I call them, Abraham Hunsaker the eighth. I call him Abe the eighth. So those sand pits, right? It's the cleanest, whitest sand. The ancient Lake Bonneville wash there. I spent a lot of my life in that pit, and makes the strongest, most incredible cement products on the face of the earth. Oh, you see my stucco job. The tree in the Children's Museum, oh, it's made from that. The sand is so. We used to make bar tile in there. We didn't even dry it in a kiln. And the irony of it, I'll get back to that. Let's walk back over there. It's a long video, but this needs to be told. The irony of all that is that I found out that Abe the First did a lot of the stucco and plaster jobs in Old Town. I didn't know that till I was well into my plaster and stucco career. I grew up in those pits. I learned to plaster at a very young age, the real stuff. We used to make that bar tile, that red and green and blue that's all over. It's masterful. Was never drying in a kiln. They learned it in San Diego. We'd pour our slurry into these molds in the sand and let it sit there, and then we'd hook them and pull them up, shake them, and just lay them in and dry them in the sun. I just see them. They're all over. My mom and dad's house. They're pristine. And there's a lot of them are 60, 70 years old. So he was a plaster. Yeah. So first they come for the craftsman. The Mormon craftsman, up until just 30, 40 years ago, the quality of work and the craftsmanship of these guys in this state was incredible. I know. I restored so much stuff. This really pisses me off. Really pisses me off. So, set up your can and flip your soup can in front of Abe. Oh, they'd love it. My grandparents would love it. So I spent a lot of my life driving the coast of California, back and forth from here to the slums of La Jolla, Pacific Beach, California. We go back to San Diego. They had a romance with Brigham City, Utah, Lava, Idaho, and Pacific Beach, California. White Earp, Sheriff Hunsaker. So I used to tell my mom, well, Eric thought he was getting all that wealth, the Hunsaker. That's why. Oh, okay. I teasing her, I just give her shit. So should we set up yeah. We'll set it up right here on my grandparents' grave. Janice, Margene, and Eveline. Fantastic women, amazing women, all three of them. Incredible women. 1, 2, 3. Grandma says, well, if she wouldn't have had her tubes tied, he'd have had a baby every year with her and try to break Abe the First's record. And that was the end, of the name line. So I sent off for kids, have them lunch. By the way, all three of those women, brilliant artists. Brilliant, man. My mom, incredible. The pinup artist at Woodbury. She was the artist at Woodbury. With Everline. Got to tell the story about her. She was at Woodbury, and I didn't understand it. My grandpa said she came home. They had a brewery on Box Elder Creek. Had this beautiful fireplace. Said she came home in her pink, drove all the way home from LA out of nowhere. She's on a full scholarship. She's the pinup artist. Why? Took all her artwork and spent 3 days burning it in the fireplace. I could never figure. She's the most brilliant artist I ever knew. She could draw pinup like she'd. I remember my brother had a broken leg. She drew up a pinup girl on his cast. He was so angry. He got sent home from school for it. I was like, what? So I could never figure out why she rejected the whole art scene until I got older. And I realized how anti-woman it was. On my 21st birthday, she brought me up. She didn't know who the Cars were. She was Elvis. You know, they were, you know, the 50s and 60s. They loved music. They would dance. My parents would dance. They were music, dance on the beach. I was conceived right here at San Onofre, for real. My dad, the Marine, nuked to death in a Nevada test site, died young. My grandma adored him. Both of my grandmas adored him. She brings me up the album cover of the Cars, album 1985. I'm like, she didn't know who the Cars were. She sure recognized that cover. I told you, Kevin, because I was the young artist. I told you. Vargas could not, she worked with Vargas. She worked there. I told you Vargas could not draw hands. I told you, look at those hands, they're like claws. She bought it because that's the cover work on that Cars album. I always remember that. She was so thrilled to prove that to me. So, Hunsakerville, Abe the Fourth. That's how it ended, the name. So, he was electrocuted accidentally. They were drilling a well, from what I understand. She died in childbirth. And he became orphaned. They met in Lava, Idaho. Ike Potter, Abraham Hunsaker got together. Think about that combination. Whoa. 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 Talk about historical. Whoa. Stand tuned.